I'll admit, I'm a simple man. When I hear the phrase, "Father, when can I leave to be on my own? I've got the whole world to see. I don't care how bad or good what it comes from is. I need to know the whens, wheres, what's, hows, and most importantly, the why." Some clips just demand further research to truly understand why they were created or how it could be possible that they exist. And this time, that curiosity led me down the rabbit hole to discovering Pinocchio: A True Story, a full-length direct-to-VOD film that came out recently this year. With the meme status it's gotten for Pinocchio's unique voice.
No, Tybalt, trust me, you're fine.
I've never seen a film so well known, yet at the same time completely shrouded in mystery to the point it doesn't even have a Wikipedia page on it. It's got about 500 ratings on IMDb, and for the record, that's pretty much nothing. One of the few trivia facts about the film is that it was released right before the Russian invasion of Ukraine, which I find incredibly hilarious for some reason, and the only Rotten Tomatoes rating has a review consisting of one word, Pinocchio oh no. So clearly we're looking at a hidden gem here, and I intend to find out the means by which this film was created and then mock it relentlessly for the final product. I'm not all too sure whether this is even a review or not, but I know that it's something I want to make and no one can stop me, so I'm doing it. Starting from where it all began with an 1883 children's story called The Adventures of Pinocchio. Created by Italian author Carlo Collodi, it was originally a cautionary tale about taking the easy way out instead of struggling to get success, having a rude boy made of wood who gets scammed out of his money and left to hang after disregarding his responsibilities. The story was later changed to finish with a happy ending of him learning responsibility and becoming a real boy, but that's not too important to know. What is important is that after 55 years, in 1938, the property went into the public domain, meaning anyone, regardless of if they had permission from the copyright holder or not, could do their own interpretations of the character in reference to its source material. This is how we got the original Disney movie, which contains a lot of its own creative liberties and began the process of making Pinocchio a pop culture icon, being used for TV shows, anime, and not to mention way more films. Need I mention Pinocchio 3000? That's honestly its own topic for another day, but yeah, films like that showed how the concept could be stretched about as far as possible if you wanted. And Pinocchio: A True Story is no exception to that. Being released February 17th of 2022, a lot of people have speculated on whether or not that's a coincidence or intentional, as Disney is also releasing a live-action remake of the animated classic, which in itself is thought to be an attempt to take money away from Guillermo del Toro, who for years has been working on his own stop-motion take on Pinocchio that's also releasing in 2022 on Netflix. So with that in mind, Pinocchio: A True Story is thought to be an attempted cash grab meant to confuse grandmas wanting to get either of the other films coming out, and I can't say it's not a possibility. Looking into its producers, the movie was created by Grindstone Entertainment, a subsidiary of Lionsgate known for distributing and creating bottom-of-the-barrel trash that you've probably seen filling up the discount section of your local Target, having over 400 films on their back catalog despite being active for only about 15 years. Surely you remember the classic original films, The Adventures of Panda Warrior and Monster Zone. Who could forget? Who could remember? Me! That's who! Besides them, the film was funded by the Russian government themselves under a company they call Cinema Fund Russia. The dubbing was done by Straight.pro, a company seemingly anyone can hire for remote voice acting gigs, and the credits call it a licensed brand LLC production, but that's so endlessly vague a title that I couldn't find what part they actually played. Could have been animators, distributors, the goddamn caterers on set, I wouldn't know. Every company related to the film that can be looked into points to it being a completely soulless cash grab with no reason for anyone to care about it, so why, in spite of it all, were people interested?
Time sure takes its sweet time.
What is that blockhead doing?
What? Hold on, fella.
I want my money back! I've seen this before!
The dub. And I do gotta say, it's a marvelous oddity on its own considering the cast. Much like the story of Pinocchio himself, the person voicing him is a man as old as time, Pauly Shore, who I wouldn't be surprised if you'd never heard of. Basically, he was a big stand-up comic who starred in one successful movie, followed by playing the lead in several increasingly less popular ones, until eventually he stepped out of the spotlight as soon as he entered and stayed in the background for about 20 years before appearing in this. When it comes to films that actually hold up and are still remembered, I'd say his most significant role was as Max's friend Bobby in a Goofy movie and its subsequent spin-offs.
Max, here. Guard this with your life, dude.
Showing that it is possible for him to be an okay voice actor with the right direction, but oh boy, you wouldn't get that impression from this. Not to say he's the only one given terrible direction though, as John Heder, the actor behind Napoleon Dynamite, is also involved as Pinocchio's talking horse Tibble, don't ask, while Tom Kenny is brought in to do the voice of Geppetto. And listen, Tom, I know you're in everything, okay? You're in Elpo in the movie for God's sakes, but there has to be a limit to everything, doesn't there? Like, I respect the constant grind that's gotten you loads of money by now, but You didn't have to do this if you didn't want to, Tom. Who kidnapped you? What alleyway were you recording in? Give me some details so I can help. I can hear the pure terror in his voice when he's trying to record this with a gun placed to his head the whole way through.
It's time for me to stop sitting around and go find my boy.
Don't worry, Tom. I'll make sure your sacrifice wasn't in vain by making fun of this movie for everything laughable about it, starting with how it goes about trying to tell a story. Now, if you thought this film had anything to do with the original story of Pinocchio, you're completely
Wrong!
or at least mostly wrong. In this version of the classic tale, Pinocchio is once again given life by a fairy, growing up on Geppetto's land and becoming a masterful acrobat who wants to see the world, aka Disney Princess Syndrome. He finds his opportunity to leave after encountering a circus that wants him to join as an act, bringing his talking horse companion and intermittent narrator of the story, Tybalt, along with him. From the beginning, the parts that make the story about Pinocchio, the wooden puppet boy, are pretty much an afterthought. I mean, sure, it's mentioned that he's made of wood a couple times, mostly for some absolutely sick burns on Tybalt's parts.
That stubborn piece of wood. You're as smart as a log, Pinocchio.
But the start of the film disregards one of his most iconic attributes by completely removing the idea that if Pinocchio lies, his nose will grow bigger, saying that's not really what happened, since obviously the true story, as the name implies, has to do with him joining the circus with his talking horse companion. That's way more true to life. Call it an assumption if you want, because that's pretty much what it is, but I think the sole reason for that decision was so they didn't have to do any more animating on his character model besides basic rigging. Wouldn't be out of line for the crew when the only difference between his human model and wooden model is a texture for his skin rather than, say, I don't know, having wooden joints, carved features, etc., but I digress. Besides getting rid of the feature meant to show whether or not he's keeping to being a good boy and avoiding temptation, the whole reason for why he isn't immediately turned into a real boy is completely removed. In the Disney movie, which this film is clearly taking more inspiration from than the book, the fairy that gave Pinocchio life stated that he'd only become a real boy after showing himself to be brave, truthful, and unselfish. But here, her only reason is saying that everything happens when it happens, and to become human, you must just think that you are, and I'm not gonna lie, that's fucking stupid.
Someone wants to be human, all they have to do is be human.
Pinocchio never has a moment where he says he's a real boy or anything like that, instead turning into a boy after, no joke, he's presumed dead and his love interest cries a tear on his body, turning him real. The most cliched, bullshitty, unapologetically ass-pully resolution to conflict any writer could come up with. And it's got almost no relation to what she said. Out of nowhere during that moment she even comes in to say, yeah, now you see I was right for not turning you back right away, but I don't see. This is dumb. You're dumb. I hate you. And Pinocchio never goes through a change or learns any lessons. Taking everything into account, he's a really stagnant, boring character that never does anything to indicate that he's gone through a change of heart. So his whole quote-unquote conflict feels more like a straight line than an emotional roller coaster. The other plot elements involved don't make much sense either. The leader of the circus wants Pinocchio to stay wooden since that's what people are coming to see, but that's also clearly not what they're coming to see. Pinocchio's act has nothing to do with the fact that he's made of wood, but instead relies on his acrobatic skills, something he's shown to have whether he's wooden or not. So there should be no reason for the circus leader to think he has to stop Pinocchio from becoming human. Not that he ever really acts on trying to stop Pinocchio other than near the end of the film, making the mention of it feel almost meaningless, but hey, we needed the generic antagonist who tries to stop the MC trope, didn't we? Equally so, the B-plot involving detectives looking into a case has some weird bits too. They're introduced knocking on Geppetto's door to ask about strange activity, and Pinocchio hides from them, implying he's encountered them before, and for the first 30 minutes or so of the film, they appear to be tracking him like he's a wanted man, but it's later revealed they're actually after the circus cause the leader steals from townsfolk while the carnies are performing. And I guess that makes sense, but why did Pinocchio hide from them at the start? Later on in the film, they do go after him for being connected to the circus, thinking he's the ringleader because he's the star of the show. And side note, that makes no sense. If you're busting a casino, do you go after the lounge singer? But if I'm reading the movie right, I think we're supposed to come to a realization that they weren't tracking Pinocchio at all. I don't know, the film does a really terrible job at conveying it. Oh, and another side note, the detective is also Bella, the love interest's long-lost father. Them including this as a plot point makes pretty much no sense to me, as the two being separate was never part of either of their characters and serves as a last-minute twist with almost no build-up, but technically it is part of the plot, so I felt the need to mention it.
It was 11 years ago. My darling little daughter went missing. And that's when I decided to become a detective.
At this point, you might be wondering if, besides the character names, anything from the original Pinocchio was actually adapted. And there is. If you want to know basically the one plot thread that has some reference to the source material of the books. When Pinocchio is on his way to find the fairy so he can ask to be turned into a real boy, he almost gets scammed out of 5 gold coins he earned at the circus by 2 performers that followed him, a fox and a cat. This is a direct parallel to the original story, where Pinocchio is almost conned out of 5 gold coins given to him and killed by a fox and cat trying to sucker him. But I have no idea why. Out of all the scenes and ideas to reference, this would be the one they partially did faithfully. It's so random and disconnected from everything else going on that it almost feels more obligatory than necessary as a plot thread in the film. So I don't get why it was added, much like I don't get the character of Tybalt. And that's how you do a transition, motherfucker. I'm gonna be completely honest, all the other characters are boring, uninteresting, and completely one note to the point I could describe them with single words. Circus leader, evil, detective, stupid, Bella, girl, Pinocchio. For lack of a better word, gay. But Tybalt goes beyond all of them to be the worst, most unlikable, completely unwatchable piece of horseshit imaginable. His whole shtick is that he's supposed to be the cautious guardian of Pinocchio, but 9 times out of 9, he just comes off as a complete heartless asshole or a cowardly jackass. Constantly throughout the film, he'll be like, Pinocchio, we shouldn't do this, or you're on your own for this one, Pinocchio, or Pinocchio, I'm an irredeemable character, blah blah blah. His worst moment, though, has to be in the scene where Pinocchio wants to help a carriage going wild, and Tybalt says it's not their problem. And he doesn't just say that, no. He phrases it like helping save Bella as she's about to die would be an inconvenience to him. Oh, I'm sorry, Tybalt, poor baby. Did you turn into an emo when Geppetto told you about his trip to the glue factory? That's the only explanation I've got for why he's so insufferable. I don't have any affection for the other characters, but goddamn, my hate for Tybalt might be pushing me towards thinking some are okay, purely out of spite. And what's he even supposed to represent in this version of the story anyway? My best guess would be Jiminy Cricket, since he was the narrator of his respective film too, but that also can't be right, since Jiminy Cricket wouldn't be worthy of the electric chip. I might be getting a bit too dark there, so how about we go back to making fun of the film's production quality? Not like that's really challenging, considering it looks like a 2007 Unity Games cutscene stretched for an hour and a half. In the day and age where animated films, as a medium, have continually been trying to innovate and look different to stand out among one another, Pinocchio: A True Story does indeed do that, even if it's in the worst way possible. Every character seems to operate on ragdoll physics whenever they're hit, meaning that they go into an automated animation that looks uncomfortable and robotic. For instance, check out this scene of the cat shooting Pinocchio. I know, but cover your laughter for a second so I can make a point. The way Pinocchio reacted to that felt completely unnatural, didn't it? That's what ragdoll physics are, and they're littered across the movie at random points. The same idea can be applied to the clothing textures and lighting, which looks entirely automated without much thought for placement or narrative relevance, clashing with the incredibly flat scenery to make for the most boring looking shots you've ever seen that linger for way too long without changing camera angles. And lingering on those camera angles helps to point out some of the flaws you otherwise might not notice in films that better understand how to work on a limited budget without looking cheap. Check out all those background characters using the same loop without being fully rendered. Behold all those vacant, empty backgrounds that make it look like whole cities are completely empty. Watch how the animators repeat the exact same acrobatic scene for Pinocchio 3 times where he does the exact same moves every damn time. And you still haven't seen some of the water effects. They're truly ahead of their time. I would say they looked like Ants, the first CGI animated film to use water, but that would be a massive insult to Ants, since its water still looks a ton better than this 24 years in the past. How do you fuck up this badly at everything? I want an explanation, but I probably won't get one. What do you think of this, Pinocchio? Yeah, that sounds about right. So in conclusion, watch Pinocchio: A True Story as soon as possible. You will not regret it. Every detail and critique I've given so far is completely meaningless when having a good time with friends, and if that's what you're looking for, you couldn't have more fun. I will say that if it ever gives you the option to watch the film in its original language, do not. The dub is what transcends this batshit crazy experience into being a laugh fest from beginning to end. And seeing the voice actors not even try to lip sync the original film is amazing to watch happen. If you want an actual Pinocchio story, this is a complete waste of time you shouldn't even consider. But if you're like me and want to just laugh There's far worse options. I had a blast writing this one in as short a time as I did, since I was so enthused to write about this, and I hope it came through in the final product. Thanks for watching, and another much bigger video is coming on the way, but I knew I had to drop everything for the sake of this. Hope you enjoyed, and good night, or day, depending on when you're watching this. Peace.